Steve Tierney, and this is my first Madhouse Podcast. I'm going to be talking about some of the ongoing plot events in my main game, Dungeon World, which is a turn-based fantasy adventure game that's been running consistently for 20 years. If you're a player of the game, I hope you find this useful. If you're not, I hope you find it interesting enough to sign up and give the game a go. Anyway, let's get down to it. A year ago, with the passing of the King of Barony, the royal courts sought to establish who would take the throne. With competing claims and many guilds, power groups and special interests trying to influence the decision, it was necessary to call a tribunal to examine the situation. There were 6 candidates, some more serious than others. It was fairly straightforward to rule out Mr. Huggies, the giant talking animated bear. The rabble-rouser, known only as the Donald, also didn't make the cut, despite his popular cry to make Barony great again. The glacier barbarian leader, Gunnar Trollslayer, was also ruled out. This left Duchess Sandra Perrette of Lionel as the Elder Steward candidate, Reynard Callaghan Tredac as the bastard upstart, and Prince Dickon as the favourite with what appeared to be the best blood claim. The tribunal was a tumultuous affair, and there was an upset when the final votes cast selected Reynard as the new ruler in waiting. So at this point you're probably wondering, how does all this work? Well, Dungeon World is what's called a turn-based game, and it actually originates, some 20-30 years ago from what used to be called the play-by-mail hobby. The play-by-mail hobby was when people actually used to play games by post, and they would send their orders in through the post. The orders would then be processed by the game master at their central location, and the results would be posted back to the player again, who would then send new orders, and so it continued. And it was a very slow way to play the game, but it was an interesting way, and it was a hobby that did quite well at the time. There were hundreds of companies running lots and lots of different games of all sorts of different types. As time changed, the offline version became online, and people began receiving their turns by post, and the whole of the gaming world evolved, and there are now very few what used to be called play-by-mail and then play-by-email companies left. We are one of them though, and Dungeon World still runs. And the way it works is that a turn runs once every 2 weeks. So players get a printout, which is in the form of a PDF, and it's a long printout. Some of them get hundreds of pages if they have very big positions, some of them less so if they have smaller positions. They go through, they see what's happened to their characters, they look at their positions, look what they own, what they control, and then they send what they want to do back as coded orders. The central company, Madhouse, my company, receives the orders. We then use a computer program to process those orders. It produces new printouts, and they're posted back out to them. So very similar to what used to happen when it was played by post, but obviously now it's all done by email. So what we then do is we fill the game up with what we call a game plot. So what the players are mostly doing is a traditional monster bash. They go into dungeons, they travel around the world exploring different areas, beat out their monsters, and they take their stuff, pretty much as you've seen in lots of games of the type. But what makes Dungeon World different is that the game has been running for 20 years. It's a consistent game world, the same game world the whole time. Some of the players have been in it from the very start, some of them are new, joining all the time. But the game has evolved with this continuous development, and so the plot has evolved as well. And so how this works is once a year we have what's called a mini-con, and that's where the players can actually get together face to face, you have a few drinks, have a laugh, play board games and talk about the game. And then we also tend to have a big event, which is normally a dinner, and that's a role-playing dinner where we'll sometimes resolve some of the big issues that are going on in the game. We try not to do too much that way, because if you do the stuff that some people can't get to because they're on the other side of the world or something, then obviously that's not fair. But we do use it to push the plot on and develop things. Anyway, that's how we kind of got where we are. And all that happened a year ago. Since then, there have been some major developments. There was much surprise when the selected heir, Reynard Callaghan Tredac, was found dead in a small village in Moonwall. He was apparently poisoned during dinner. Nobody quite knew what he was doing in the middle of nowhere in the first place, and there was much suspicion about that. Shortly afterwards, Duchess Sandra Perrette of Lionel was attacked by an assassin. This, despite a large cohort of bodyguards and all manner of magical protections, it was essentially a locked room mystery, and although she survived, the Duchess was seriously injured and has been out of the public eye ever since. Units of royal militia were sent to protect the remaining individuals with claims to the throne, and the Kingdom of Barony became tense and nervous. News started to come thick and fast after that. The city of White Citadel in the south had some kind of uprising, the news of which was suppressed, it seems. A guard commander was killed in Gorst. People were warned about travelling in certain parts of the kingdom. As rumours continued to spread, the Royal Guard reserves were called and recruitment posters began to appear to bolster the army ranks. There were rumours of conflict near the Great Forest and at the Southern Glacier, meaning that unrest literally was spread across the entire kingdom. Now, Dungeon World is a big game, and the Kingdom of Bereni, just one part of it, but the main playing area is huge. If you play the game at its natural pace, it would take you several real years to walk all the way across the Kingdom of Bereni. So the fact that unrest was spread all the way across shows you the scope of the problem. The city of Gorst, along a hotbed of discontent and rebellion, erupted into all-out riot, and troops were sent in. And it was then revealed that the kingdom appeared to be under attack both from a homegrown rebellion and a mysterious group calling themselves the Red Knights. Adventurers and army units were called in to tackle the situation. So how did that work? Well, players play, mostly they play adventurers. So a lot of the game is done with adventurers, but every now and then we have a special event. This was a special event, and it enabled players, if they wanted to sign up army units as well, where they could go and fight in the army units battle. And as is usual with Dungeon World, you can play the game completely for free. You could play army units for free, you can play individual characters for free, but one of each basically, or small positions. If you want a big position or you want to do more stuff, then you have to get into the commercial game. Of course, that's how we make our money, and we do have to make some money to keep the game going as long as it does, but I think we offer pretty good value. Anyway, the players took up the challenge and they all got involved. And this is a situation as it currently stands. All across the kingdom there are battles going on. There is some news coming in as to how the fighting is panning out, and also some new developments. And players who've tuned into this first podcast will probably be interested to know what those are. But I'm gonna just kind of keep a cliffhanger here, because I'm going to tell you the new developments and how the battles are going in the next podcast. The purpose of this one really is just to give it a shot to see how it goes. I've not done a podcast before. This is the first time. I don't know how the podcast will develop in future, but I hope you enjoyed the first one. And just remember, until the next one, what doesn't kill you make you stronger, unless it does kill you, and then there's always the land of the dead. Laters.